Okay, we should be live here in about 5 seconds.
All right.
Always takes so long.
I know.
Okay, we are live. Okay, everybody, welcome to Angie and I's weekly live stream on narcissistic abuse support and Q&A and chat. So this is a live stream we do every Tuesday at 1:30. We alternate channels, so make sure to subscribe to both of us if this is something you're interested in being a part of. So Angie, thank you for being here today.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's see, we've got Heather here, VIP kid teacher is here. And
Hello.
yes, hello. Angie and I were thinking about maybe talking today about different, what did we say, like turning points in our healing, like whether that was a word or a video or an aha moment that you had, or we were just kind of curious, like what were some big turning points for people out there. And then we thought we might share some of our own as well.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any feedback as far as like what were some of your major shifts,
breakthrough moments.
Yes, breakthrough moments, please let us know in the chat or in the comments below after the video airs.
Yes, absolutely. I'll tell you something. For me, one of the things that I think was, there are several big turning points for me, but I think one of the things that was a big turning point was recognizing that I really didn't have to accept the perception of my narcissist. And in this case, I'm talking about my parental narcissist who, as we all may be aware, raised me since birth. And I found that by identifying the beliefs about myself that had been sort of embedded from this person, and then discarding the beliefs and replacing them with my own preferred beliefs or truths, I should say, that was a huge thing for me. It took time and it was a little bit of fake it till you make it, but it made a big difference. And then when I recognized how, I would think about how I would talk to a friend or one of my children or something in the same situation. And then I would think to myself, well, I should talk to myself in the same way. I should love myself in the same way. Unconditional self-acceptance, that was a huge deal for me. And those things, along with a couple of other things, were big turning points for me, aha moments. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of my earliest aha moments was just the realization that not everybody is the same.
Sure.
Like my toolkit for the way I understood people, like I really had the mindset of like everybody is the same, and the people that are dangerous and destructive or deadly are just either misunderstood or like baby birds with a broken wing. And even if I didn't feel responsible or even able to fix them, I still viewed like love is the answer, and that love could get through to them, and that therapy always helped, or that communication always helped. And so the realization that no, there's just some people for whatever reason that have truly pathological personalities and they're not interested in changing. And yeah.
Now that you mention it, that was actually kind of a big deal for me too. I think discovering narcissistic personality disorder, realizing, holy shimolies, this is what I've been dealing with for my whole life from this person. And then recognizing, oh my gosh, not only was it that person, but it was this person and this person, and this person.
Yes.
It was a breakthrough for me as well. Just simply knowing that in fact, it wasn't me who was broken, or at least I wasn't as broken as I had thought, I should say. Yeah, that was a huge deal. Yeah, and Little Britches says the same thing. Finally understanding that it wasn't me. If it were me, I could change things. I could never change things, and I tried so hard. And that is exactly who I was. I spent my entire life blaming myself and trying to fix myself from the time I was a little kid until the time I was married to a narcissist, and all the times in between. I was always trying to figure out how to make them like me better, how to do better, how to get their approval, how to please them. And never could I quite figure it out because it was never me to begin with, just like she says. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And Deborah, actually Angie says, realizing that he'll never change, just getting that closure of
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to change, and me trying to get through to them that, hey, your behavior is a problem, or hey, it's not me, isn't, they're not solutions oriented.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. And Nail says, for me, a turning point was realizing how I was letting other people treat me and to start taking back my power and setting boundaries. And that was a huge thing for me as well, the taking back my power and setting boundaries, and realizing that you can, determine how crappy you allow someone to treat you up to a point. I mean, people are going to do what they're going to do, but you don't have to stand around and take it,
Yeah.
and that was huge for me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, Angie, about kind of realizing, oh, it was this parental person in my life, and then it was this person and this person and this person and this person, and like pulling that string on the sweater. That was really eye-opening. I think that's a big aha for a lot of people, myself included. Like, we tend to we seek out this information because of like maybe one primary intensely painful or just intensely bizarre relationship where we're like, what on earth is this? Like, this is nuts, and I need to try to figure this out. And then we realize after maybe a couple months, like, oh my goodness, actually there's been other problematic people in my life, but it's just never been this level of insanity before. And you start seeing more of like this cohesive picture. Because for me, at least up until that point, every problematic person I'd had in my life, and there were like really maybe 4 major ones, they all came, well, the last 2, Jack and Steve, were very similar in behavior. And that was the aha moment of like, there's a pattern. But the other 2 people in my life were very, very different.
Yeah.
So it felt like a hit and run each time.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't see a pattern.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I kind of had a similar thing. When I married my ex-husband, I really thought I was marrying the opposite of my parent. And that was somewhat true, but the tendencies, we had an overt and we had a covert, and we had an altruistic and we had a bum. I don't know. But different types of narcissists, and yet some sort of a combo deal on the husband. He was very charming when you first met him, and then quickly that would deteriorate, and people would love him at first and quickly dislike him, which is completely the opposite of my other narcissist. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Let's see. We have, Adeko, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Adaku 75 says, my turning point was did you already read this one? Am I forgetting something? Okay. My turning point was my last romantic relationship. He didn't have a car and he couldn't keep a steady job, and he relied heavily on me. He had narc tendencies, but wasn't a full-blown narc. I mean, what's a full-blown narc? I think there's definitely a spectrum, but I also think that just because somebody appears to show empathy sometimes doesn't necessarily mean they're not full-blown anything. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's are they using, abusing, or exploiting another person? Like, anywhere along that spectrum, it's a problem. And kind of more of like the parasitic narcissists out there that you were talking about, Angie, like just the moocher bums.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And I think that's another aha moment for people too, when we start talking about boundaries. And because so this stuff flies under the radar of so many of us, or we're like, or we start talking about, okay, yeah, you got to, it's important to examine deal breakers and standards and kind of who we have in our circle. And a lot of people, myself included, are like, well, if I got rid of every really problematic person in my life, there'd be no one left. And I love that insight, because then it's sort of like, but then that's a problem. Right. Either we have, and it's generally a problem with boundaries and standards and deal breakers.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, okay, and then having to learn kind of what's acceptable behavior instead of, and I guess using a different measuring stick, kind of like what you were saying and what this last person was saying of like, well, they weren't full blown. Not to say that, either of you were saying that wasn't a problem, but like, I think so oftentimes we'll be like, well, this person was problematic, but they weren't as bad as my father, or they weren't as bad as my ex.
Yes.
And
I
like,
see that a lot.
yeah, I do too. And like, then that can get a person really kind of lost in the brush, because it's like, well, but if it's still a problem, it's still a problem. And like, let's use healthy as our new standard, and not varying degrees of like pathological behavior,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's difficult, I think, because it's so easy for us to just stay with, stick with what we know. And I think that's something that, you know, we have to break the cycle, because it is, I don't know if you see the same thing, Dana, but I think if you look at most people who find themselves in a toxic relationship, they can look back in the history of their own family, and they can see that either they were raised by someone toxic, or someone toxic was in their life significantly and affecting them. Now, in some cases, this is like the bully from school or something like that, but a lot of the time it's one of their parents or one of their primary caregivers. Do you
Mhm.
see that same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, they say that the first like 6 or 7 years of a person's life is the most significant. Like, it really shapes, kind of sets the stage for a person's, not only their personality, but how their self-esteem and
Yeah.
how they view themselves. And if we're not getting that validation back from a primary caregiver, whether it's a babysitter, whether whoever it is we're spending like a lot of time with, like
Hmm.
quality time with,
Yeah.
um, you know, if we're continually being told in direct or indirect ways that we're not, that everything, that things that we're doing are wrong, stupid, or bad, or that there's something like wrong with us, children internalize that. And they really, it's kind of sets the stage for future self-esteem issues, and all
Yeah,
kinds of problematic decision making as a result of that.
it's true. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We have a question here from Lovely Cat,
Okay.
uh, who asks, when a narcissist does that contempt expression with his mouth in front of me, how should I react?
Don't. I would smile or I would not react. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but they expect you to react. It's gray rock. They expect you to react. They expect you to do something, do the opposite of what they expect. If normally it makes you cry or it makes you back down, don't do that. Now, again, I just want to point out something. This is only if you're not being physically abused by this person. If you're being physically abused, in my opinion, nothing that we say here is valuable until you get out, personally.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not being physically abused and you don't fear physical abuse from this person, then you don't allow them to see you respond to that face. So when they make that face, you either just keep looking at them, or looking here, or at the top of their head, or wherever. And because I find that if you don't look them directly in the eyes, it helps a lot to keep you kind of insulated from the emotion a little bit. But then I would suggest that you either just do the complete opposite of what they expect. So smile or don't react at all. And the reason is because they are making that face because in the past it has gotten a certain type of reaction, certain type of supply. Maybe you jumped to do what they wanted, or you changed your opinion or your thoughts or whatever. And in this case, if you don't change your thoughts or opinion and you don't react to that face, they're going to have to take some other step in order to get your attention. And not always, just be careful is what I would say. Thoughts, Dana?
Yeah. When I've experienced that, and I agree with Angie, like there's no benefit to reacting, even if they're not trying to get a rise out of you. Like, I think it's when a person, no matter who it is, when they show like contempt or disgust, they're like, ugh, or I take that and I file it in my memory.
Yeah.
And right away, immediately after somebody shows me that because that they're basically non-verbally saying that they're not on the same side as you.
Correct. Yep.
And so all of a sudden now they've become emotionally or possibly physically unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And I have in my own life have found when I'd have to really think about that, but there's only been 2 people that I like remember seeing those expressions on their face, and both of them have been like highly problematic. And shortly after seeing those expressions, their behavior towards me became very hostile. So like I just distance myself physically and emotionally from people like that. I've just found that, it's those flashes of emotion like are not normal. Like it's one thing to be upset or frustrated or irritated or exhausted by somebody's behavior, but it's another thing to just be like to have disgust or contempt. Like when you're getting this kind of a face, like just watch out. And I guess I would just realize like there's not the relationship that you thought you had there when somebody gives you that kind of an expression.
I absolutely agree. And I'm with you on the just back away from that. Now, at this point in my life, if someone ever gives me that face, which it's rare, but if someone ever does, I have no interest in continuing any sort of relationship with them in most cases. And I won't generally as well. But again, it just always depends on, your personal ability to feel. You have to focus on accepting yourself completely and also enforcing your boundaries, and that has to be a boundary for you, I think, right?
Yeah. And I think, if you were to, I'm just trying to think of like more mild forms of like disgust or contempt that I've experienced.
Well, I mean, even just like simple things, like if somebody asks you, what do you do for a living, and you say I help people get out of abusive relationships, or I talk about narcissistic abuse on YouTube, or whatever, I'm a certified life coach. Sometimes people are like, I don't even know what that means. And, or maybe if you happen to be somebody like me, I have kids. And if I happen to talk to somebody professionally who doesn't have kids, doesn't believe in having kids and being, entrepreneurial at the same time or whatever, it could be anything. And then of course it could just simply be that you have an opinion different than theirs, which I recently told a story on my channel. There's a guy that we know personally in our lives, like through friends, and we were all friendly until the moment that he decided that because our opinion on vaccination was different than his opinion on vaccination, he was better than us. And there's a whole other mess that goes with that. But he literally, gave us the proverbial look of disgust. And then us being my husband and myself. And that was just such a ridiculous situation. It doesn't really, it could be anything is what I'm trying to say. It could be the tiniest of things. And they could.
And that's what I was looking for, like examples that might not show like such a severe degree, but more of like along those lines. I'm trying to think of like when I've done that myself. I'm sure I have, right? Like when you disagree with somebody that can, I guess the point of that is when those looks do surface, it really signals like a big break in the relationship.
For sure.
And that there isn't a feeling of like mutuality there. And so like whether or not that can be restored, I think is going to be largely dependent upon both people's willingness and the ability to have an honest conversation about what happened.
Exactly. And I think, and for example, in the situation I mentioned with the vaccination thing, I was invited to a friendly debate about this by this person, and I participated in a friendly way. This is why I think what I think. Here's my resources to back it up. Here's some research I did about it. This is what my doctor said. This is what this person said. Then I even brought in another person who was a friend of mine who is actually a scientist who does research on this stuff and who has a child with autism. It's a whole thing, okay? Because, autism is the issue people are saying. Anyway, we're not going to get into all that. I'm not talking about the stance, but what I'm saying is that I thought it was a friendly debate. I thought we were just talking, and this person freaked out because my opinions, because I backed myself up with research and valid points. And I think he, instead of, continuing what he called a friendly debate, he decided to shut down and do the proverbial look of disgust. I think I was trying to make a point there, but I got distracted. Anyway. What?
Well, but I think, that's the thing, like, cause I guess now that I'm thinking about it, like I had a recent thing with my family with politics that surfaced, and I was trying to keep my cool. And then I finally just lost it. And I still feel bad about that. I was surprised by my own reaction with how triggered I got and how reactive I became. And, like that's really fractured our relationship. And so yeah, I guess just the point being is like, it's one thing to have disagreements with people. It's more, I guess conflict isn't the problem. It's how somebody handles the conflict.
Right.
That's the difference. And with a, if you have people that disagree no matter on what the issue, is there that sometimes there's not that willingness. Like you find out somebody's position on something and you're like, I feel like we're just done. Like I don't even want to try to work towards mutuality.
Yeah. And I think that,
You
I
know,
think yeah, absolutely, I do. I mean, I guess here's an example of that, which is going to be a weird example. But for example, I really can't stand any sort of like anti any race discussion. Okay.
mhm.
And I find that some people in my life will, without knowing that I'm 30% Jewish, will talk about Nazi crap. Or without knowing that, probably 70% of my friends happen to be Black because of where I live, and because that's who I happen to be friends with, they tend to talk about, badly about Black people or about Jewish people or about whatever. And I feel like those people are unhelpable sometimes, and I just kind of pull away from them. I try to express why I think they're wrong as respectfully as I can, but I think in that case, and this is a weird thing to talk about, but I think in that case that, these people either have been taught this since birth, or they have had some kind of other, I don't even know. I think they're,
Mhm.
some people just won't change is my point. I think. Uh, I think. And so
Yeah.
when you have somebody, like you said, when you have somebody who feels really, really strongly about something that you feel the opposite, and also really strongly, most of the time I'm able to talk with people, but there are certain topics like racism that I hate. And I hate them because the people who are racist people, they're not trying to change. They have this deep-seated, disgusting, backward belief that
Mhm.
that they're better than people, or the people are whatever because of the color of their skin or their ethnicity or whatever. And I just those people for me are the people that I will give the look to. You know what I mean? I guess I
Yeah.
was trying to think of an example in which I would feel like not trying to resolve, because in most cases I'm pretty like removed from the need to like, I don't feel like I need to explain myself to most people. I explain if they want to hear me, and if I hear them hearing me and see them hearing me and understanding me or trying to, then I'll talk. But if they're, some people are a brick wall, and if you can't, you know I'm not going to bang my head against the brick wall. You know what I mean? I'm not going
I
to waste my
agree.
energy. Yeah.
Like when somebody shows me that they have such a degree of hatred, like generalized hatred
Mhm.
for other people's sexuality or religious beliefs or color of their skin or what have you, that to me is a big, like, I need to just back way up because
Right.
that kind of hatred tends to stem from fear. And
Yes.
and it's probably going to come out in more areas than one because it's illogical,
Yeah.
to hate like whole groups of people based on like one factor is not a good reason to dislike anybody,
I totally agree with you. I think it's
So
ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a huge red flag for me too. I'm like, oh, okay, good to know. Like, and I distance myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, okay, this is, sorry, I have to go here. I feel like that up to a point, we have a certain responsibility to try to explain to people when it comes to certain hot button topics, but not ones that are personally, uh, things that affect more than one person, right? Like racism, like prejudice, like
Mhm.
whatever. And I think that in those cases, I try once. And but very rarely are you going to be successful with somebody who has such a closed mind. You know what I mean? Anyway, okay, let's move on. We're out.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see here. So, oh, Deborah says, both my parents are in a nursing home now. My mom went in September 1st. Oh, yeah. She said, I got a call from the home saying my mother was threatening to kill herself if she could not have a cigarette. Wow. She said, the psychologist agreed with my assessment that she has BPD in addition to both of them suffering from dementia. That is, I don't even know that that's a question, but that is something to have to deal with. she has gone through it. Yeah,
And that's the thing, like it's lifespan. I think a lot of people, and that's another aha moment for a lot of people, is they think, oh, maybe they're even told like, oh, your mom or your dad or whoever's going to mellow out with age. And it's a personality thing. It's not an age thing. And I used to work in nursing homes too. And yes, there's personality disordered people. I think there tends to be this either or thinking for like a lot of people out there. Not saying that Deborah has it, but like people think, oh, this person they're either bipolar or they're personality disordered, or they're either an alcoholic or they're personality disordered, or they're dementia or personality disordered. And the reality is people are complex and they can have a lot of things going on with them. I mean, they can have, dementia and personality disorders and be an alcoholic and be a diabetic and have a mental illness.
Yeah.
And that stuff that's more pervasive and persistent, like mental illness and personality disorders, that are not being like effectively treated or have gone for decades untreated, it's still there. Like it doesn't change with age. And I think it's just added challenges with each stage in a person's lifespan. I think one of the challenges Deborah might have is other people understanding. Like I have a difficult and demanding mother. She's manipulative. She's dramatic. She's erratic with her behavior. But a lot of other people are like, yeah, but she has dementia and she's in a nursing home.
Right.
And all of these feelings of like, this is how you should act.
That is a great point. Yeah. And I hear that. And I hear that not just from people on YouTube here, but from clients and even in my own life, because people will always, but that's your mother. But why would you, that's your mother, that's your father, that's your whatever. And they don't think about the depth of the abuse that people suffered for so many years, their whole lives on many levels. And it's hard to explain to people why.
And even if you did, right? Like because they only see, I think so many people have this idea that abusers are, really witchy people all of the time. And they're not. They can come across as really charming, or they can even come across as like not so bad.
Right.
And other people just don't see, because they're not on the receiving end of it,
Right. Oh, yeah. And then people will say things, well, all mothers are a little controlling, or all mothers are like that a little bit, or, oh, she's just worried, or whatever. And people who have, quote unquote, normal parents can't fathom the depth of, to which they will stoop. The fact that this mother was probably jealous of you as an individual person at some point in your life, or this father, or, this person, literally undermined your entire personal development growing up and turned you into something that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise become, and caused you to have to go through all this stuff. But I want to just point out this one thing. I always like to point this out for a reason, because I think when you go through a childhood like that, and then a lot of times you don't start to heal until you recognize it in a romantic relationship, but not always. But when you do start to recognize it and heal from it, I really believe, and you tell me what you think, I really believe we become almost more evolved in some ways emotionally than your standard non-survivor. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Because I think normal people, I think the default is that we're all kind of taught, and I guess there's like cultural differences, but I think by and large, well, I'll just speak for the US. I think by and large for the US, we're kind of given this toolkit with how to understand people and understand ourselves and how we relate to them. And we go through life and we're using this toolkit, and then we come across like some major dysfunction, and we realize like our toolkit we're missing major things. Like not everything can be fixed with like a screwdriver or a hammer kind of thing, And so then it's sort of like, oh my goodness, what am I missing? And then, but it's truly like falling down a rabbit hole. And a normal person, even if you're in a mental health field, unless you're on the receiving end of this, like you really just can't even begin to grasp the depth of like this kind of behavior, like the damage and the craziness and the irrational, how irrational and illogical and pervasive and just destructive it is. It's one thing, like reading about it, it just pales in comparison to what it's like to be on the receiving end of this. And I see from so many people, I mean, this is another like kind of wake up moment in my healing is I really struggled with trying to find people that understood what had happened. And because so many other people had this toolkit of like commitment is forever, family is forever, forgiveness, you need to forgive in order to find peace in your life or to heal, and all of these kind of platitudes that are given. And there's a lot of people that have that mentality. And it was a big wake up call of like, I think I just need to take the road less traveled because nobody seems to get this. And their thinking is really dysfunctional, and it's functional only when you're around other functional people.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. But like, it's not going to work when you're dealing with a total lunatic who is potentially trying to kill you for no reason, or they're just trying to destroy your self-esteem because they don't feel good about themselves. Like, it's like being compassionate, being forgiving, being understanding, being assertive, like none of that works when you're dealing with a dangerous and destructive person.
Right. Right. Everything that you would do to deal with a standard non-narcissist or non-cluster B type none of it works. And it would work with almost anyone. And that's the thing is that, during the time that I didn't know what this was, I would try to help these people, my ex-husband or whoever, whatever person it was in my life, I would try to help them understand how to handle stuff better, how to deal with me better. I thought I could help them change and grow and whatever. No. And so then when that didn't work, I, of course, turned inward and I've tried to figure out, well, what's wrong with me that I can't deal with this? Or I can change myself so that I can handle this. That's what, for example, my ex-husband had a huge problem with, let's call it, self-gratification. Okay.
Okay.
It was a huge problem. And I would find that, even just a glance at another person might cause him to feel the need to self-gratify. And I would catch him during these processes. And that's a funny way to put it. I would catch it, and it would destroy me. And so my, in my 23-year-old mind or whatever I was at that time, 22, I thought, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. I'm not attractive to him. I need to get my stuff together and try to be better. So like I read every single book that I could possibly get at the library about how to be better at this stuff, how to be, more open, more this, more. And literally I just basically served myself up to him on a platter and was like, here, I'm trying to be exactly what you want. I mean, I went through this whole thing. I tried to figure out who his ideal woman was so I could become that. And it turns out she was Japanese. So I wasn't going to be able to do that. But that's exactly, the kind of time waster that that's what I did. I tried to make everything better, and I was just really killing time and I guess entertaining myself in the process and learning how to understand normal people better, but that didn't work in this case. So
anyway. Yeah, a lot of shifts in I'll tell you, okay, so like there's that initial rabbit hole, right? Like that we go down, we're like Alice in Wonderland. We're like, oh wait, what is this? What is narcissism? And you're like following the white rabbit, and then you just really fall down that tunnel. And then just when you think like you've kind of figured out this bizarro land, there's another tunnel that you find, and that's understanding our own self-esteem, like just like you were saying, our own self-image and the way we've been
conditioned almost.
Yes, conditioned, and then trying to twist ourselves, thinking like misunderstanding, thinking that we needed, because we're trying to be solutions oriented, and man, and so much of the stuff is just as subtle. It's like a few steps to the left and like everything is radically different. Like on the surface, it seems like really great behavior. Like, oh, I'm going to be solutions oriented. I'm dedicated to commitment. I'm willing to compromise, and then not realizing, oh my goodness, actually I was like, 3 steps to the left on this, and was willing to compromise meant me walking on eggshells and twisting myself into an emotional or physical pretzel.
Yes.
And trying to save this relationship meant me grinding down parts of myself.
Yeah.
and like just navigating this whole new path of, oh my goodness, like I didn't realize I was doing this, and to such a destructive extent, because I just didn't know what I was dealing with. And I think that's a big shift, like shifting our locus of control instead of like so freely giving it to other people. I think just being aware that that's what oftentimes what we've been doing is letting them set the pace, letting them control the shots, letting them define who we are and what we do and what we think and all of this. And then internalizing, shifting that back to an internal locus of control where it's like, you know what, I know what I think and I feel and I believe, and I know how I want to look and how I want to act. And like, you don't, like, you can have your opinion, whatever, but like, I'm not going to internalize that and allow you to grind me down,
Yeah.
or to turn me into something I don't want to be, even if it's well intended, you know?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And that's exactly, that's for me, that was exactly why I think that was such a big aha moment for me, where I was like, wait, I don't have to believe them when they're talking. I don't have to think
Yeah.
I'm not good enough. I really grew up thinking, honestly, Dana, I'm not joking with you, that I was not as legitimate as other people. And what I mean by that is that anything I thought, felt, said, did, whatever, was not as real as someone else. It was not as real. Like, it didn't matter as much as what someone else said. And that I was almost, anytime I had a strong opinion, I almost felt like it was a fake opinion. And that sounds weird, but because I was brought up by someone who literally would invalidate every single thing I said, did, thought, or felt constantly.
Mhm.
And if I says, oh, like this, if I had emotions about things, oh, or just blow it off completely. And so it took me a long time to realize anybody wanted to hear what I had to say. It took a long time. And gratefully so, because now I have several people listening. But it took me and even now in real life today, sometimes I have to remind myself to not shut up, because it's just my nature to, when somebody's talking to me and asking questions about myself, my first almost reaction, or almost instinct or reflex, is to quickly turn the conversation around on them, to them, instead of me, because that is something that I was always doing growing up, because I never believed that what I said, thought, felt, or did was real. And so when you think about that, and you think about, well, having to sort of understand or reimagine the world from that perspective, and change the perspective into thinking that you are in fact as good as other people and as legitimate as other people, took a long
Mhm.
time. It did. And it was just, but because I couldn't, it took me forever to shed that idea that I wasn't as real as other people, you know? And 10 years ago, there's no way that I would be sitting here talking with you, because I would never have had the nerve to even pretend to know anything about anything. You know what I'm saying? Because I
Uh-huh.
was so constantly put down. Don't get me wrong, I was in all the gifted classes at school. I got decent grades. I did all the right things, but none of that mattered. And I, even in those gifted classes, as I was performing along with everyone else, I still felt like like an imposter, like it wasn't, like I wasn't as real as the other people, and they just didn't know that I wasn't as smart as them, and those tests I must have got lucky on all those
Yeah.
tests. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous. It's yeah. So now what I do is to try to break the cycle in my own family, I make sure I validate my kids and listen to their feelings and their emotions, and you know validate as much as I can, while still maintaining a certain amount of discipline for obvious reasons. But
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. One thing that I've struggled with that too, for sure. And one of the things, I think mine came out a little differently though. Like it was more of um, I guess I just never felt good enough.
Mm,
And all of those feelings of,
same, by the way.
yeah, like
Yeah.
just not feeling good enough,
Mm,
it's come out in, this was a fairly recent realization I had, came out in busyness.
mm,
And so I'm constantly like, I way over schedule myself. My to-do list is ridiculous and it's not achievable. And it's just, I think it's a way to stay busy to kind of avoid a lot of those feelings. And maybe even feeling like if I achieve all of this, like then I'll feel good enough. And Um, and so one of the things I've been trying to do, and so then here's the added challenge of this, and you could probably relate, but like when you really start putting yourself out there publicly, right? Like you're publishing books, you've got a YouTube channel, all of this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and and you get like a mixed bag of people, right? Like some of them are going to give you constructive criticism, some of them are just going to be like flat out really mean. And it can be really difficult to hang on to the self-esteem that you do have, uh, and not get really rattled by
Yeah.
getting all kinds of feedback from people. Um, and so one of the things I've been trying to do is like balancing, like trying to get like an accurate understanding of what I'm doing, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, like what I'm actually putting out into the world. So I don't feel like it's either, I guess, just a more accurate understanding. Like, so I don't think it's, oh, it's fantastic, or I don't think it's absolutely rotten. So like, I keep trying to have like kind of this, I try to steer into like this growth mentality of, you know what, I'm just going to start where I start. And I realize like there's going to be things that about this that are not right or that could be better, but
Sure.
I'm just going to I'm going to just squeeze out everything I can from each experience, and then I'll just do better and different each time.
Yeah.
um I don't know, it's weird when you're trying to recover from low self-esteem like that. It's hard because you don't have a real accurate understanding of everything about you.
I get it. I get it. And for me, it's been a journey for sure. But if you can at any point in time learn how to sort of, and I'm sure you've been here and done this, learn how to sort of step outside of yourself and really just look at the situation like on paper, right? So, and what I mean by that is, okay, none of us are perfect. None of us make absolutely perfect videos 24/7 or write perfect books or do all the perfect things because we're human. That's the case.
Mm-hmm.
That's for all of us, right? But at the same time, something that has been very validating for me is to not only our amazing community here and over on my channel and the Spanily and all the Thrive After Abuse, all that kind of, but also just recognizing that in fact what I am doing has value. And I know for sure that you get these same emails, comments, all that stuff. Um, and I went through this thing where we talked about it with Richard and Tracy a while back. We talked about how we felt overwhelmed by all the emails and we didn't know what to do. We felt terrible. We couldn't answer them all, et cetera. You lost sleep over it and got stressed out about it. And I had my own similar issues. I went into how do I fix this? How do I deal with this? How can I help these people? All these people. And at some point had to recognize that that wasn't possible, blah, blah, blah. The reason I'm talking about that is this. It's about we're only one person, but we can and we can't do everything, but we can make a difference. One person can make a difference. We can do something, is my point. There's a quote about that that sounds a lot more eloquent, but my point is that what I've recognized is that my intention matters. Okay. If I'm trying to just be up here to make money or whatever, then that's never going to work. Obviously, we need to survive, we need to eat, so we have to charge for some stuff, right? But at the same time, um, my mission, and I think for you the same thing, is bigger than money. It's I try to help as many people as I can, even though people who can't afford, by doing the live streams, by doing the videos, by doing the content, all that stuff for free. You know what I mean? At the
Mm-hmm.
same time, it's about I have to say it again. I'm so sorry. Unconditional self-acceptance. Somehow I got there. And I think I got there by just acknowledging, okay, there are things about myself I don't really like. You know, I really wish that I was like more motivated to eat healthy and exercise all the time. I sometimes have my good weeks and months, and right now I'm having a bad week.
Mm-hmm.
And I could sit here and beat myself up about it, or I could say, you know what, I charged my Fitbit and I'm back on point and I'm just trying. And it's okay because I'm human and I have this flaw. We all have these flaws. We have to make allowances for ourselves. I have to gamify my ability to exercise or I will not because I don't care about it. I don't enjoy it that much unless I'm listening to the right music. I'm totally going on a tangent here, but my point is that when we get to that place where we can accept ourselves unconditionally, that's when we don't have that feeling of not being good enough anymore. And I would say that at this point in my life, I'm at like 90% of the time I don't feel not good enough. I feel good enough. And 10% of the time I still have relapses, and I have those moments where I think, oh my God, everybody hates me. And then I snap
Mhm.
myself back into reality, and I go, okay, settle down. It's probably that's because I think there's 2 days a month where my emotions are all over the place, and I recognize them as part of a certain kind of cycle in my life that happens every month. But
Mhm.
but when I now that I know, and now that I recognize that, and I can go, well, oh my God, this is the word. My whole life is falling apart, and then I go, oh wait, what day is it? Oh yeah, I'm good. Okay, it's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's the unconditional self acceptance allows you to do things like listen to how your body rolls every month and notice patterns. And it allows you to do things like be okay with failing sometimes, and be okay with, people not liking your video or not liking your book or whatever you said. And that happens to me all the time. Just yesterday or 2 days ago, I shared a post from one of my people, and it said, it was, I don't know, it was kind of, I guess, a little controversial, but I didn't think that it was. It was just basically like, let's go ahead and sparkle anyway, even though people are saying to black out your Facebook picture or whatever. And I kind of liked the post. I liked that. It felt empowering. I shared it. And then somebody kind of attacked me for it, and then attacked my friend for it, which I felt even worse about. And because she's also a survivor. And I thought, oh my gosh, I never thought that sharing something that's it. And so for a brief moment, I thought about removing the post, or, you know, defending myself for sharing the post. And then I just decided, no, you know what? I stand behind what I posted or what I shared. And I just went ahead
Mhm.
with it, and I didn't allow myself to dwell on it. It's about choosing, not only setting boundaries, not only, but also letting go of stuff you can't control. And I couldn't control the fact that this woman who attacked me felt offended by this post, and she's still my friend on Facebook, and otherwise we're fine. She didn't really attack me. She just sort of very clearly and kind of negatively, I felt like, expressed her opinion. I don't even know if negatively is the right word. Aggressively expressed her opinion. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I felt a little attacked. That's a better way to say it, because I don't want to put anything on her that isn't accurate. But it was just a weird situation. And does that make, am I just totally off?
No, no, that makes, I think it is. It's like learning to just stand in our truth. And I think that does go back to like, you know, just learning to live an authentic life and to really get in tune with our thoughts and our feelings and our actions.
Mhm.
And, you know, that not everybody's going to agree with us 100% of the time. And that's okay. Like
Yeah.
we can still go down our path. And James here was saying that he struggles with feeling the same way, Angie, that he's fighting the thoughts of nobody liking him, and it's tough.
It's hard. It is. And the truth is that if we're really honest, some people aren't going to like us. And that's the thing. I had to get there with
Yes.
that myself. What were you saying?
Yes, no, that's was a huge aha moment for me too.
Me too. Yeah. And being a blogger helped me a little bit. Before I started YouTube, I was blogging for years. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that um, there are a lot of bloggers who try to compete with other bloggers, and I never did that. I always just tried to do me. And in so doing, and not trying to compete with other people, I think that I think I do that now. I mean, I think you must be on the same on the same level there, because we're sitting here together on your channel, and we do this every other week
Mhm.
on each other's channels. I don't think that competition with people who are in, sorry, somebody just tried to Skype in.
Oh,
um, I don't think the competition in our niche or whatever is really a necessary thing. I think that everybody has a different message. I mean, a similar but different
mhm.
message, and some people are going to absolutely love the way I talk, and some people are going to be like, I cannot stand her. I'm fine with it, because the people who can't stand me should just not watch me. You know what I mean? That's why there are other people. Like, some people don't like Ollie Matthews because he's real, like, in your face. He does not care. And
Mhm.
I don't agree with everything Ollie says, but I like him because he's honest and he's as real as he can be, I guess. You know what I mean? So I don't necessarily agree with some of the ways that he puts things, or I wouldn't put things that way, I guess I should say, because he's still got a lot of, I think he's very angry. And I personally try not to stay angry. It's bad for my stomach and my heart and whatnot, but physically and mentally. But also, he makes valid points, and some people really need to hear from that kind of a perspective, from somebody who's just
Mhm.
like, no nonsense, say it like it is, no concern, for how that some people like it. Some people need it. It's like Gestalt almost, right? I
Mhm.
don't know. Anyway, and some people are going to think that I'm too silly or too whatever. And some people might think that, like I know people have said to me that we're an interesting combination because you tend to be a little more serious sometimes than I do. And then, I mean, I say serious stuff too, but I try not to get too deep, and I get deep, but I don't get too, I try not to be too negative. Not that you are, but I guess I smile and laugh a lot more than people expect me to. Is that sensible to say?
Yeah, I think you're high energy,
Yeah,
and yeah, I think you just bring a totally different level of energy to all of this. And
right,
yeah, but I think and like to your point, that, realizing like 10% of people out there are going to love us.
right,
Anybody, right? Like 10%
right.
of people out there are going to love you. 10% are going to hate you.
Yeah,
And 80% are going to fall somewhere in between. And when you
exactly.
just realize like this is just a thing,
Yeah.
instead of getting so swayed
Mhm.
by anybody's opinion on that,
Yeah.
like, and not, um, it makes it so much easier because then you're like, oh, okay, this person is like one of the 10% that loves me or hates me, or one of the 80% that falls somewhere in between. Like, okay, cool. Like
Yeah.
I don't need to attach myself
Right.
to, like, I don't need to get my self-esteem does not need to get involved in this.
Exactly.
I guess is
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Like, it's always nice to hear from people that are like, oh, I love what you did and it changed my
Yeah.
life and all that. Like, that's great. But at the
Awesome.
same time, like, I still don't, I try to really hard not to attach any self-esteem to that, because it can be fleeting, and it's a
Yes.
hard way to live if you're like, your self-esteem has to come from being validated, or it can be so easily shaken by being invalidated.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly. I think that that's exactly, and and Beg and Bark Pet Sitting says, Angie, don't overthink what people think. Be you, girl. I love
yeah.
that. And but that's really where I am in my life, because I like, some people tell me I talk too fast. I hear that probably once a week, and I try to
Hmm.
slow down, but I'm just a fast talker. I can't help it. But then other people have said to me, I'm from New York, and if you talked any slower, I would not be able to watch you. So, it just depends on the people. But I think the point is that when you are to that place where you're like, I'm okay with it. I'm okay. And I'll tell you, I've gotten to that place where I'm neutral. Like, I have my opinions, and they are strong opinions about whatever it is. But in most cases, I don't feel the need to justify my opinions anymore. I
Hmm.
say what I think, and I'll share my thoughts, but sorry, but I don't go crazy with it. And I don't feel the need to convince someone else that my opinion is accurate. I share why I feel the way I feel. I share my facts and my figures or whatever.
Hmm.
But in the long run, it doesn't matter to me what that person thinks. And that sounds almost narcissistic to say that, but it's not like that. It's about let live and let live, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where I've gotten in my life, where I'm just like, okay, well, as long as it doesn't directly affect me or mine, like, live and let live. The guy with the difference of opinion in vaccination, that affects him and his people over there, not me and my people over here. So I don't really care
Hmm.
what he thinks. You know what I mean? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right
And
on.
Marie makes a comment and she says, the most important thing, honestly, is not feeling alone in this.
Hmm.
Before I found this channel, I've never experienced such excruciating loneliness, but I found you guys. So that's kind of off topic, but
It's exactly what we're
so
doing here, though, is that,
yeah, like
yeah,
100% right on at the same
yeah,
time.
yeah.
I think we can all relate to that. I've shared before, when I started my blog with all of this, I really thought what happened to me was extreme and very unique. And I felt so alone in that. I felt so much shame because I thought this is just not something that normally happens.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, then all of it's like that song from Sting, The Message in a Bottle.
Hmm.
Like I threw a message in a bottle, um, basically hoping it would find where, the person it needed to go to. And then I woke up and there were all these bottles on the shore from people responding. And that's exactly how it felt. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm not so alone in being alone.
Yeah. Same, same.
Yeah.
originally I started just writing. I was always a writer by nature and trade. And so originally when I was doing the research on, I mean, I was a journalist. That's what I was doing. But when I was doing the research on narcissism NPD and I found it and I realized, oh my God, this is what I've been dealing with. I did what any nerdy, geeky journalist type would do, and I wrote some articles about it. I researched, I wrote articles, I talked to people, I did things. And as I was doing that, I was also still writing about a lot of other things that I was thinking about and dealing with, because this was all on my personal site, my personal blog. And then people started to reach out to me and go, oh my God, that's what I'm dealing with too. You helped me. And that was a huge deal for me. It also made me feel less alone. And that is exactly why I think, again, I think we do what we do. Both of
Oh,
us.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, people ask me all the time, like, basically, like, why do I do this? And it's like to me, it's sort of like, what else is there? Like, I can't even fathom doing anything else. Like,
Right.
to me, it's the most rewarding thing and part of the human experience to just be able to connect with other people and to grow.
Yes.
To go through all of this. It bothers me to no end because I feel like there's so much unnecessary suffering out there on so many ways. And so much of it's unnecessary because it can be prevented by just open discussion and dialogue. But back to what we were saying earlier about feeling less of a person or feeling ashamed or broken. I think so many of us, when we make mistakes or when we've been on the receiving end of abuse of any kind, we walk around with so much shame, and that shame really prevents us from kind of acknowledging our experience. And then people don't talk about these things. And no matter what it is, if it's bankruptcy, if it's foreclosure, if it's, like just life stuff, switching majors in school, not realizing your car was low on oil and like your engine caught on fire, like all kinds of things that people, like mistakes that we make or choices that we make or things that we're on the receiving end of. And because people don't talk about it, then nobody else can grow from it.
Right.
Exactly. And so it's like we learn, because nobody thinks that this stuff would happen to them until they find themselves in it.
Right. That's totally true. Yeah, totally true. Yeah. I want to say Nikki Lee said she thinks we all bring something special and she appreciates all of us. She adores Ollie and completely understands what I was talking about. Thank you. Because I don't want to say negative things about anyone. And I'm not saying anything negative about him or anyone else. I'm just saying there's a difference in personality. But thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go off topic there, but I'm totally with you on that. Now, this is interesting. Pam Hall says narcissists underestimate the empath's ability to feel their pain with weakness. And I would say that's possible.
Wait, say that again. Narcissists what?
They underestimate the empath's ability to feel their pain with, they assume that we're weak instead of that we're feeling their pain. And I think that's almost like I see what she's saying, but at the same time, I think there's a certain amount of responsibility that we have to put on the narcissist and say, maybe they do understand and maybe they just don't care. I think that it's important for us to make that distinction. Not that but she's right. They do assume we're weak when we're just being compassionate sometimes. They see kindness as weakness. She's right about that. So.
And I think it's important that for all of the empaths or empathetic people out there that we realize that your kindness doesn't have to mean weakness.
Exactly.
And the difference is having boundaries.
Yes.
So and it's hard. It's hard to go through these experiences and not let this harden you. And if a person doesn't understand how to interact with other people in a safe way, or if they don't know how to keep themselves safe, it's very understandable that they're going to set up big time walls and they're not going to want to be vulnerable or to be kind because that's what they think got them hurt in the past. But it wasn't those feelings of kindness or connection or compassion that got us into trouble. It was that we didn't have an understanding of healthy boundary standards or deal breakers. And this manipulation is so subtle and it's so insidious that it's easy to hook a person and just drag them off the trail and they don't even realize what's going on. But now that you know different, we can do different. And as far as narcissists thinking that like we don't understand their pain, I don't think that they care. I don't even think that they understand their pain.
I agree.
I think that all of their behavior, it's like they just want to put their pain inside of us.
Yeah.
Like they're not even understanding or connected to it. And so that's why to them, it's so real. It's like, no, I don't have any issues. All of my issues have everything to do with you. Here's this long list I have of everything that I hate about you, kind of a thing. And to them, it's absolute truth, not realizing that there's like, that nobody's going to meet our criteria 100%, like that other people have a sense of individuality and that it's okay for them to be different. And they just have a really skewed set, like everything is kind of this direct reflection of them.
Right. So. And and I think what I've seen a lot, they don't take responsibility for their own emotions. Whenever they have an emotion, if it's negative, especially, they blame it on somebody else. So, it's
a very immature understanding of their own feelings.
Yes.
Right. Like a mature person, let's say the same situation, let's say, your significant other forgets to buy bread at the store. A normal person is probably going to be frustrated by that. Like, oh, great. Like now I got to go run to the store and it's 10 o'clock at night and the kids need lunch tomorrow or whatever, that can be a frustrating, and it depends on what's going on, right? Like sometimes it's frustrating, sometimes it's no big deal. Like it just depends. But if it's frustrating, a normal person gets, okay, like, and then they just handle it.
Yeah.
Right. But a narcissist there is no self, Pia Melody describes it as like a self-containment boundary, which I really like her description of that. Like, there's no self-containment boundary. So there's no ability to like moderate their behavior. And so they can go from 0 to 10 really quickly, and they might really lash out and become physically or verbally abusive or both. And in their mind, the other person deserved it. But a mature person can look at that and be like, no, it's you can be frustrated, you can be angry and upset, but that doesn't give you the right to lash out on another person like this. Like that's not okay. It doesn't matter if they forgot bread or not. Like you need to be able to control yourself. And so that's the part that they're missing.
Yeah. And I think they're literally like emotional toddlers. I mean, on so many levels. I even did a video one time called like 4 ways narcissists are like toddlers, and some people didn't like it, but it's true. and they really are. They really are. Or like preteens sometimes, depending on how mature they are, but it's really a low level of emotional functioning, emotional quotient, very low. Yeah. I have this really excellent thing that I would like to say to you from the chat from Jazz 181 that I think is a really, I know we're like just about, actually we're probably out of time, but I want to share this if this is okay. She says, being your authentic self is so difficult sometimes, but in the end, it's the best feeling when you live your truth. And I can absolutely identify with that. And she's so right. What do you think about that?
I think that's the goal of all this. Yeah. I think being our authentic self is the goal of healing, is to get all of that back into alignment. And that's the thing, like these experiences with narcissists can be such a wake-up call. It's the catalyst for personal growth that we never knew we needed and for sure didn't want.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the benefit of having your whole life blown apart, is then you can start choosing like which pieces to reassemble with. And the thing is, like, once you find your authentic self, then everything else around you starts to work and falls into place. And that's a process, like finding your authentic self. I think all of this, it's just kind of peeling different layers back. And, you have, and the cool thing is all of these levels of awareness, there's kind of this like exponential growth that comes from it. So it's not like 2 + 2 = 4. It's like 2 + 2 tends to equal like 10 or 12, because each thing just stacks upon each other in such a way that it just allows for a brand new understanding of everything. And Yeah. So I guess, yes, aim in that direction of like your authentic self, your truth, your understanding, truly understanding like your wants, your needs, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, your opinions, who you are,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right on, right on. Okay. Do you want to grab another one before we wrap up? I think I have a call in like 18 minutes or something. So
Okay.
we'll have to wrap up at some point in the near future. Let me know. There's lots of, oh my gosh, James said that his ex would scream at a baby who was screaming, and of course the baby screamed louder. Of course, that's pretty. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate, but really,
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, I'll add something real quick, something that I've really been thinking a lot about kind of what keeps us from finding our authentic self. And um, a lot of it has to do with being like seeing reality clearly and and that's a process in and of itself, like getting comfortable with reality. And a big part of that, especially when we're talking about dealing or not even dealing, like interacting with other people, is seeing them clearly for who they are and getting rid of the fantasy.
Yes.
And that was another big aha moment in my healing was, and I've had this realization on several different levels, but perhaps like, again, more profoundly just over the past month of, oh my goodness, yes, I wasn't just seeing like the narcissist in my life through the fantasy lens, a lot of which they created, like the mirroring and the soulmate connection and all of that. But I had been interacting with a lot of people in a way that it was this fantasy of who I hoped that they would be, or based off of not enough information, right? Yeah. Like I would interact with them for a few moments or a few days, and I really thought I like had a full picture of them, and that wasn't accurate. And that was definitely been more problematic, like with dating.
Sure.
I would move really quickly because I would be very quick to be like, oh my gosh, this person's so amazing, not realizing I was falling for the fantasy of who they were. I hadn't spent enough time with them to know who they really were. And so getting rid of the fantasy, getting more comfortable with reality. And it's hard because reality is not as seductive and dopamine driven as the fantasy.
Truth. Yeah. I've experienced that same thing. And I think one of the things that has helped me is to, just as I look at all of my flaws, see them in the raw, naked, ugly light, and I accept them, I do the same thing with other people. So, for example, when my mother got very angry at me or upset when I filled her in on my DNA and then tried to say that maybe I took the test wrong because, I spit in a tube, and somehow it must be my fault that it was showing up wrong, because she thought for our whole life, my whole family believed growing up that they had Native American blood, and that was not the case. And that was very upsetting for some people. And I was just I thought it was kind of exciting to find out the truth, but no. And it was at that moment that I recognized that, oh my God, there's a limitation here for her. She's not capable of seeing outside of this little box that she's drawn around herself. And I even offered to pay for, at that moment, a DNA test. And she said, I know who I am. And so I said, okie dokie. And then I left it, because why? You know what I'm saying? Like, why sit here and dwell on something that someone can't? Once again, you can't control everything. I can't control her perception. So I'm just going to let it go. You know what I mean? And see her limitation. Yeah. See the limitations. And when you can see someone's limitations, you can almost feel sorry for them. But that does not mean that you have to allow them to continue to infect your own personal reality. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, I like
that. There's such huge power in that, of just unlocking horns and being like, I don't need to be right. I don't need to convince them to see things my way or to see the truth. Like, I don't even need this. Like, I just realized that for whatever reason, like, we're just they're not going to see the truth. They're not going to see, there is no communication that's possible. And so I was in a situation recently as well with a family member. I don't want to go into it just in case they're listening, but like, it was, the old me would have been really angered by it. And the new me was like, I just see this as this, these are your limitations. And like, this is your understanding of how you treated me. And, like, I'm just, it's done.
Yeah,
There's nothing, I'm just done. Like, it's not, none of this is worth any more of my emotional energy.
exactly.
Um,
That's a place, you're absolutely right. It's powerful and it feels good when you can let go of the need to prove yourself to other people in general, but especially to people who are obviously not trying to hear you in the first place. That's the
yeah.
thing for me.
Yeah.
That was, yeah. That's why I tell people I don't talk to brick walls. I don't.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
it works.
So let's just real quick. So, and I lost it in the chat, but somebody had said, you know, this healing is about finding our authentic self. And I think that's
Yes.
the point I'd really like to end with today, is just that reminder of this is all about you finding you and learning to love what you find in the process.
Yes. Flaws and all, warts and all.
Awesome.
You have beauty, you have worth, you have value, and you have just as much beauty, worth, and value. And I don't mean physical necessarily, but of course we're all a little cute sometimes.
Mhm.
But I mean everybody has that. Everybody, when you are your authentic self, in my opinion, and when you can find that authentic self and be it, it doesn't matter. None of the rest of it matters, because then you understand yourself, and that understanding yourself and being unapologetically completely yourself, that is a beautiful, powerful thing.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. Well, Angie, thank you so much for being here again this week.
Always my pleasure.
Yes, I just really enjoy our conversation. So
Me too.
thank you for that. Thank you for being you. We just appreciate you.
Back at you,
So,
Dana.
well, thank you. So we will see you guys next week, Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Uh, and we'll be over on Angie's channel. So make sure to subscribe. And her contact info will be down below after the video renders and airs. But it's Angie Atkinson, Queen Being,
Yep.
across the internet. So we'll see you guys then. Take care.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, Dana.
Bye. Just bye.
Talk soon. Bye.